I have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker this morning. I want, before I make those words of introduction, just to refer you to a piece that was in this morning's Wall Street Journal that references the antidote to anti-Semitism. So let me put this just in some immediate context. This is from Eric Cohen, who's the president and CEO of Tikva. Anti-Semitism isn't simply a social prejudice against Jews or a general lack of tolerance for people who are different. The most passionate Jew haters single out the Jews for what we stand for: biblical morality, faith in American meritocracy, deep national attachments rooted in history, and military realism in the face of enemies seeking our annihilation. The Jews are a thermometer for the moral condition of the Western world and the health of our civic institutions. While many Americans long assumed that the United States, unlike Europe, is largely immune to the destructive power of anti-Semitism, we should no longer take that for granted. It's my privilege to introduce to you this morning my friend, Rachael Heisler. As of January 2024, Rachael has served as Pittsburgh City Controller, and in this role, she brings the authority of her office as well as a deep moral courage to her work, which allows her to consistently speak truth to power. Prior to being sworn into her current office some 20 months ago, Rachael Heisler served as Pittsburgh's Deputy Controller. And prior to that role, following her graduation from the University of Pittsburgh, Rachael spent 7 years as a senior advisor with the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget and held staff positions for Congressman Jason Altmaier and Senator Bob Casey. In her civic roles, Rachael is also deeply engaged with the world of the nonprofits, serving on the boards of the Northside Food Pantry, the Mattress Factory Museum, Jewish Healthcare Foundation, Cafe Momentum, PGH, and the Jewish Family and Community Services. On today, what matters most, however, is her allyship, courage, and moral witness. Significantly, Rachael Heisler, who I should add, though it should not matter, is not Jewish. Yet courageously, she was Pittsburgh's only elected official to twice file legal objections against a proposed BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanction-style referendum targeting local area businesses with ties to Israel. And this she did, those efforts, which ultimately succeeded in keeping those anti-Semitic proposals off the ballot. Of her allyship with the Jewish community and in recognition of Rachael's work combating anti-Semitism in 2024, she was awarded the Stand With Us Shalom Award, and we're grateful that Julie Paris from Stand With Us, our regional director, is here this morning as well. When accepting her award, she reminded the audience, Rachael did, that since October 7th, people have been very gracious, calling me brave. I don't feel brave, she says. I feel like I'm just doing the right thing. She continued in that same address, I will continue using my voice to stand up against anti-Semitism, racism, LGBT hate, and Islamophobia. On her social media feed, she has also spoken plainly. For example, she called attention to threats faced by Jewish students on campus, writing, "Anti-Semitism is a threat to Jewish students and needs to be treated as such. We can no longer tolerate behavior that encourages violence." And Rachael has consistently urged the broader public not to leave the burden of fighting anti-Semitism to the Jewish community alone. So it is that Rachael Heisler has declared, we must not let anti-Semitism be a Jewish problem. All of us have a responsibility to speak out. Her message in this regard is neither abstract nor symbolic, but grounded in a lived reality, and her own experiences speaking up for institutions and our neighbors demonstrate this. Using her office to protect civic safety and dignity, and reminding us all that hatred of Jews is never an isolated Jewish issue, but a wound in the body politic that threatens us all. The title of her address this morning is Anti-Semitism, Not Just a Jewish Issue. Would you please join me in welcoming Rachael Heisler to Ohav Shalom. Thank you. Oh, good.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I usually start these addresses by explaining what the city controller does, so I appreciate your patience this morning. This is a new space for me to address an audience. I learned 2 weeks ago that this is called a bima, and I'm new to synagogues despite having spoken at length about Jewish safety and security in the last couple years. I want to start today just explaining my background with known and loved Jewish people my entire life. My mom's close woman, and I have known Candy my entire life, and I thought our differences were Candy celebrated Hanukkah and I celebrated Christmas. And when I moved to Pittsburgh in 2003, I was a student at Pitt. And my friends in college were Jewish. Everybody was Jewish. And a lot of that originated from in 2003 and 2004, the Bush reelection effort stemmed, their campaign was active in against same-sex marriage. And a lot of my friends who were Jewish and were gay were comfortable going home and talking to their parents about how they were gay. And a lot of my friends of other faiths didn't have that same relationship with their parents. And I remember that quite vividly. And I identified with that safety. I'm not gay, but I respected that so much, and my friends who were gay and that relationship they had with their parents. And I had tons of Jewish friends. I was so engaged with Jewish life on Pitt's campus that for Christmas one year, my parents bought me Hanukkah gifts. I had Hanukkah socks. I had a Jewish calendar. My mom asked me recently if I wanted a Jewish star bracelet for Christmas this year. And so I was active and involved in Jewish life on Pitt's campus. I went on spring break with Hillel in 2006. I did cleanup work in New Orleans. I hosted a Passover Seder in 2007. My college roommate was, and it's something that I just carried with me into my professional life. I worked for Congressman Altmaier, as the rabbi said. And in that capacity, I learned about the political space and the interconnectedness between the United States and Israel. And I stayed involved in that world. I babysat for Jewish families in college and in after college. And I don't share this as a message of self-aggrandizement. I share it as motivation to all of you, that your Jewish values are our values, and that respect and dignity for all people is a way that you share your light. And I respect that so much, because it is the connection that I share with all of you today. And, you know, when we talk about anti-Semitism, as I have learned very aggressively in the last 2.5 years, but it is what the Jewish community brings to the table are those values. And I think that is how you create allies, is having that and bringing that to the table. I remember in 2018, before Tree of Life, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who I had gotten to know through politics, not through my engagement with the Jewish community on Pitt's campus. And I said, I don't understand anti-Semitism. And he shared with me, he said, it's an obsession. People are obsessed with Jews. And after Tree of Life, I understood that much better. And since I'm 7th, I understand that to a degree I never thought I would. When I was campaigning, I came across a neighbor. He had a mezuzah on his door, and I remember talking to him. He had a golden doodle, so I sat down. Anytime anybody had a dog, it was an opportunity to sit down and learn about their dog. And I remember he said, well, I'm Jewish, and I've since learned he was a rabbi, but I didn't know it at the time. He said, why should I vote for you? And I said to him, Jews need allies too. And this was in May of 2023. And I had no idea what that meant at the time. And 5 months later, I understood what that meant. And since then, we have seen what has happened. And I stand by those words. And I promise until the day I die that is a commitment that I will continue to live up to. As we talk about anti-Semitism, it is happening every single day. And as the rabbi mentioned, the BDS referendum is an example that I never thought that would cross my desk. What does that mean? What is a BDS referendum? It was put forth twice in the last 1.5 years. It was put forth as a demonstration that it was to stop a war, right? That referendum was never going to end a war. 7,000 miles away. What it was going to do was endanger the health and welfare of people who come to visit Pittsburgh, who live in Pittsburgh, and who do business in Pittsburgh. The example that was provided on the website of that referendum was to boycott Dell computers. Dell Computers is not headquartered in Israel. Dell Computers is an American company headquartered in Texas that was founded by an American Jew in 1984. That's how you know it had nothing to do with the war, and it was an anti-Semitic referendum that it attempted to end business with an American company that was founded by a Jewish American. That's how you know that that referendum had nothing to do with the war and was an attempt to end business with a company that the city of Pittsburgh does business with. Our computers are Dell Computers. What the referendum would have done, however, is it would have impacted the city's ability to acquire goods and services that we do business with routinely. What does that mean? A third of the world's naloxone comes from Israel. What's naloxone? It ends in opioid overdose. So opioid overdoses, city paramedics have carried naloxone for 50 years. Naloxone ends, if you're overdosing on an opioid, it reverses that. And it isn't just people that are on the street. Senior citizens overdose accidentally on opioids routinely. And our paramedics administer naloxone twice a day, and they have for the last 10 years. And our ability to obtain naloxone would have been impacted by this BDS referendum. What else? Fire safety equipment. There are two top carriers of fire safety equipment. And I know this is not what you would have thought of, but this is what it would have impacted. There are two fire safety equipment companies in the United States that we would not have been able to obtain if this referendum would have gone forward. It is anti-Semitic to its core, and that is what these advocates were attempting to do. It ignored core public safety functions of city government and was undermining public safety in every way. Secondarily, it totally ignored other conflicts happening around the world. The week of the second BDS referendum in Thailand, they deported Uyghurs that no one's paying attention to folks around the world. They deported Uyghurs in the middle of the night, sent them to China, and no one issued a word about it. It is abhorrent what is happening. And the other thing I'll just briefly mention is the safety component that is happening. These BDS referendums would have impacted public safety responses in the city of Pittsburgh. Our public safety unions, the people that represent our city police, our city paramedics, and our city firefighters, all joined our efforts in the city controller's office and joined us in opposing the referendums. Public safety and first responders were supportive of the controller's office position and saying this referendum has no position in the city of Pittsburgh. Tolerating anti-Semitism is the toleration of hate. I am watching personally the expulsion of Jews from my political party and our shared social circles. Jew hatred is becoming mainstream, and I am continuing to be shocked about it, and I refuse to stay silent. I'm encouraging all of you to speak up. Speak up when you see it on social media. Anti-Semitism, like all forms of hate, is a burden shared by every single person in society. We know societies that tolerate hate do not last. It is especially concerning because people with anti-Semitic beliefs rarely see themselves as hateful. In every form, they believe they're acting righteously. That's because the Jew becomes a symbol of evil, defined however each generation chooses, and opposing this feels like a virtue. That's how anti-Semitism is spreading so quickly, and it is so dangerous. Make no mistake either, both sides are seeing the acceptance of anti-Semitism. It's on the far right and on the far left. It's insidious on the left and obvious on the right. When we see Free Palestine signs placed in yards or affixed on people's jackets, these same slogans are what people chant before they killed 2 people outside of a museum in Washington, D.C. This movement is irrevocably broken because rhetoric that leads to the further marginalization of others is a form of hate. It is not a form of protest. And on the right, we know that inflammatory rhetoric and misinformation has been particularly harmful on online platforms where extremism is fueled. Conspiracy theories about control of the media and other outlandish things have contributed so dangerously to this moment. And why am I telling you this? The most important thing about allyship is the acknowledgement of irresponsible and harmful behavior. We need to call out people who chant "globalize the Intifada," or dismiss vandalism as graffiti, or ignore harassment because it's free speech. This behavior has contributed so dangerously and imperiled Jewish safety so severely. I'm going to end my remarks today with my own Dvar Torah and talk about the meaning of being an ally. I think about moments in history when people in power have made a choice to stand up for others, not because it has benefited them personally, because it was the right thing to do. One of the most powerful examples comes from the Hebrew Bible. After the destruction of the First Temple, the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon. For generations, they lived far from their home. Their identity was under pressure, and their future was uncertain. And then something remarkable happened. When Cyrus, the Great of Persia, came to power, he issued an edict that allowed the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. He didn't need to do this. It wasn't politically necessary, but he chose to use his position to restore dignity and freedom to people who had lost both. And that's what being an ally looks like. It's not just standing up when times are easy. It's recognizing when a community is vulnerable and choosing to act, and even when there's no immediate reward, and even when it might come at a cost. Cyrus showed that real leadership means safeguarding the rights of others to live, worship, and thrive. And as I stand with you this morning, I don't pretend to carry the weight of your history, but I do know this: the Jewish story teaches us that allies matter, that what others do can either leave you in exile or help bring you home. And my commitment is to be the kind of ally who, like Cyrus, uses whatever voice and influence I have to make sure the Jewish community is safe, respected, and free to flourish here. My commitment to you is to continue to always be an ally to this community, to use my voice to make sure that you remain safe and you're free to worship, live, and learn in peace. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for trusting me to be here with you today. Shana Tova.